But that's a good segue to Stephen, because we've talked a lot about the internal machinations within Canada, some of the public perceptions that led to that. I'm interested as well now, looking at how the region has been viewing Canada. Number one, how's it viewed the strategy? But Stephen, you've been having discussions not just there in Japan, but you travel throughout the region extensively in ASEAN, in Taiwan, etc. The perceptions of Canada before this strategy, and the perceptions perhaps after this strategy. I'd be interested in you sort of shedding some light on, what sort of Canada does the region want? It might be different in different places. What sort of Canada does the region expect? And did this strategy, in your mind, sort of meet some of those expectations?
Thanks, Jonathan. I think that I'll use three keywords to try and convey my thoughts. The first is relatable. The second is resources. And then third is this idea of reliability. And in terms of relatable aspects of Canada's foreign policy within the region and coming off the Canadian Indo-Pacific strategy, I think there's some things to like, some things that the countries within the region really don't get, and then other aspects I think that they may disagree with. So the position of China within the Indo-Pacific strategy, I think, came as a surprise. Many countries within the region have seen and understand Japan as Canada rather schizophrenic in terms of its China policy, and the fact that China played such a central role in thinking about the Canadian Indo-Pacific strategy is a real plus. I think that they also liked the highlighting of important partners within the region. That's Japan, South Korea, Australia, ASEAN. I think these are well taken, and it's a relief that China is part of the region, not the region. And I think that the strategy really put that into focus. That being said, I think that there's a few initiatives or a few thoughts within the strategy that really aren't relatable for the region. And frankly, I think it's a lot of the progressive issues that were being promulgated within the strategy. Quite frankly, most of the countries within these regions, before the policy was released and after the policy was released, don't share these Canadian values. And as a result, they see this not as a good use of resources within the region. I think they also thought that there probably could have been more focus on some of the region's challenges. And the challenges aren't just associated with China's rise. I think North Korea and weapons proliferation is very serious. The challenges on the Himalayan plateau is very serious. These are areas that I think could have been placed more central within the strategy. In terms of resources, this is a challenge for Canadian credibility. And Margaret mentioned this, a 10-year plan of $2.3 billion really isn't much when we think about the $3.4 billion that the Canadian government has put towards the Ukraine since February 24, 2022. This is a figure that came from the Prime Minister's office. So, and the Prime Minister's office continues to want to invest more in the Ukraine. So comparing the resources that have been invested in terms of the Indo-Pacific versus Ukraine, I think it raises eyebrows within the region of how sustainable and meaningful the Canadian footprint will be without a much larger set of resources being deployed in the region. Reliability, and this goes to the very last point. How do these countries see Canada within the region, and does the Canadian Indo-Pacific strategy change that? Well, I think what I hear in the region over and over is we have challenges in terms of credibility. The walkout at Da Nang after the TPP negotiations still is a hangover, and has created reliability challenges for Canada and Canadian diplomats within the region. I guess the optimistic views about a progressive FTA with China, the bringing of terrorists or separatists to India on an official visit of the Prime Minister, these all really continue to create credibility challenges as we think about Canadian engagement within the region. And lastly, I think, I think it would raises questions in terms of the Asia-Pacific Foundation's central position within the Indo-Pacific strategy, considering that it has written papers and it's advocated for against this idea of like-minded countries supporting a rules-based order within the region. And I think that placing this organization front and center in the delivery and implementation of our Indo-Pacific strategy really creates credibility challenges when that institution doesn't believe in the fundamental rule-based order and like-minded approach to dealing with the region that really has been the cornerstone to post-World War II Canadian peace and prosperity. So again, I think relatability, reliability, and resources are really key ways to understand how the region sees Canada after the Indo-Pacific strategy has been released.